This potato dish is famous amongst chefs, but it's not so famous amongst home cooks. And I don't know why. I think it's tastier than a Dauphinoise. It's cooked with chicken stock, so it has a deep, savoury, French home cooking style flavour. It reminds me of my grandma's cooking. But the best thing is, this recipe uses very little fat. So I can eat this indulgent potato dish with not even a shred of the guilt I get when I'm eating a Dauphinoise. So let's get into it. I'm going to get started with the ingredient that takes the longest to prepare, the onions. They're a key component for this recipe because they bring a ton of flavour and moisture. I'm starting by slicing them in half, peeling the outer layers, and I'm going to save these scraps for later in the recipe. Then I'm slicing them not too thin, but not too thick. Too thin and they'll turn to mush when I cook them, and too thick and they won't cook as evenly as I want them to. So something like this. Now I've got the 2 onions sliced. I'm adding a small 25 gram or roughly 1 ounce knob of butter to a cold frying pan. The sliced onions, a good amount of salt, and for me the most crucial ingredient, a shot of water. This is a key ingredient to speed up the caramelization process of the onions. I'll explain why in a moment. With the lid on, I'm placing that pan onto a high heat for just a few minutes to get the cooking process started. Next, into a saucepan, I'm adding 750 ml of water, 2 chicken stock cubes, and all of that onion trim that I saved from a minute ago. Next, I've got a handful of fresh thyme. I like to rub it gently between my hands. This makes a lot of the leaves come loose. Then I'm just picking off the rest until I have around a dessert spoon of just leaves. I'm going to save them for later in the recipe, and I'm going to add the remaining stalks to the saucepan as well. Adding the onion trim and thyme stalks is just a way of bringing some freshness to the off-the-shelf stock cubes, and it's waste that would have otherwise gone into the bin. I'm placing that pan onto a medium heat to infuse the flavours until I need it. Okay, so back to the onion, which has had around 5 minutes of cooking over that high heat. The water has evaporated and helped to soften and wilt the onions. If I didn't use that shot of water and a lid, then this first wilting stage of caramelised onions takes a lot longer, sometimes 20 or 30 minutes, whereas this has taken 5 minutes. So I'm starting to see some browning on the base of the pan. I'm not worried as this will get removed through something chefs call deglazing, as I continue to cook and stir these onions. The lid's going back on and I'm going to leave them to cook. Personal update, you'll see a new kitchen setting in my upcoming videos. That's because in the last few weeks, me and my wife packed our lives into a couple of suitcases and moved to a different side of the world. During this time, I had to rely on public Wi-Fi more than ever, and that makes me feel very exposed. But if I use a great VPN, it takes away all of my worries about internet insecurity. That's why I'm very grateful to have Surfshark VPN as a sponsor of today's video. Surfshark is an app and browser extension that encrypts my data, which allows me to browse the internet safely, no matter where I am. When I'm traveling, I need reliable and safe access to my internet banking, emails, and apps. So Surfshark gives me the peace of mind that my data will be secure and accessible from all my devices. Right now, if you use the discount code GOSORK, you'll get 4 extra months added to your purchase completely free. And if you're not sure if it's a good tool for you, then no worries. They offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. I'll leave a link down in the description box below, or you can head straight over to their website and enter the discount code GOSORK to get your 4 extra months. 20 minutes and a few stirs later, these onions are almost ready. They're browned, wilted, and smelling delicious. Now I'm using no lid and continuing to cook them on a low heat. Another 15 minutes have passed and these onions are ready. They've darkened further, caramelized more, and smell even better. I'm going to leave them in the pan off the heat until I need them. Next up, the star of the show, the potatoes. Here I have 1.2 kilos of russets, but any floury potato will work well for this recipe. I'm peeling them, but if you're a fan of the skins, then just leave them on. And I'm going to thinly slice them using a mandolin over a large mixing bowl. If you don't like mandolins, I get it. You could do this process with a knife. Just take your time and get the slices as even as possible. But mandolins are so much quicker, and they give very consistent slices. I go for around the thickness of a poker chip. Everyone always uses a coin's thickness for this reference, but I think poker chips are more universal. I've never loved using mandolins, and I've always been pretty careful using them. And I'd never had a bad accident until 4 or 5 years ago. I was using one, not paying enough attention, it slipped on the surface, and my fingertip was the victim, unfortunately. Since then, I've become a lot more cautious. So I always use a bowl or some sort of container to lock the mandolin into. And once whatever I'm slicing has built up a decent flat edge and gained some stability, I use the divot in my palm and get my fingers up out of the way. There are probably safer ways, but this is how I do it. Now I've got the potato sliced. At this point in the recipe, I need to work reasonably quickly, because the longer the potatoes are left exposed to the air, the more they will oxidize and turn brown. And I can't put them into cold water to stop this, because that rinses all of the starch off the potato. And I need the starch to help keep this recipe held together once cooked. So speed and no faffing around is crucial in this stage. Here I've got the onion pan, which is cool to the touch. I'm taking out around half the onions, setting them to one side for later, and spreading the remaining half out so they cover the base of the pan. This is going to be a bed of flavour that I'm going to build the slices of potato on top of. I'm adding a little of the infused stock. This will steam the potatoes from underneath and help them to cook evenly. Then from here, it's just about building the layers of potato, and all of the layers are virtually the same, the exceptions being the third layer and the final layer. So for this first layer, I fan the potatoes out evenly covering the base of the pan. Then I add a little of the picked thyme, some salt, a little cracked black pepper, and a few small ladles of the stock. Then the second layer is exactly the same as the first. And the third layer just gets the addition of the remaining caramelized onions. One thing I do want to talk about that will apply to potato gratin, Dauphinoise, or any other recipe that uses thinly sliced root vegetables. It's really common for people just to chuck in the slices of potato, kind of jumble them around to get them mixed up with the flavours, and then just take a little more time making the top layer look good. Whilst I think this method can work and is quicker, I do think some things get overlooked. What I find whenever I've done this kind of quicker style method is when I come to press them during the cooking process, there are uneven mounds of potatoes, like valleys and mountains. So some parts get really compressed and some parts don't. And I think this is the reason why a lot of people struggle with uneven cooking, because it's taking the heat longer to get into the compressed sections of potato. So taking a moment longer to spread out the slices evenly will save more time in the oven and give a better end result. Then the fourth layer, potatoes, thyme, salt, pepper, stock. And the fifth layer will be my final layer. This is the layer to make it look good. So I'm taking a little extra time to tuck in the slices and make it look nice. Then I'm just giving it a press to see that some stock should rise to the surface. Then I'm adding a little more. It's hard to overdo the amount of liquid in Boulangère potatoes, and I want a tender, moist dish, not a dry one. So into the oven at 160 to 170 Celsius, no higher than 180, otherwise the top will be overcooked before the centre is ready. After 30 minutes in the oven, some things have changed. It's not looking too appealing at the moment, but this is where the magic of this recipe starts to happen. I'm doing my first press. This is achieving a few things: bringing the stock to the surface and rehydrating that top layer, and compressing the slices of potato, so they begin to stick together and cook evenly top to bottom. You could do this pressing with anything really. Potato mashers are probably the most common in professional kitchens, and a fork would also work well. Then back into the oven and continue to cook. And I'm pressing them every 15 minutes or so. After just over an hour of reasonably gentle cooking at 165°C, my Boulangère potatoes are ready. They smell incredible, look incredible, and they taste even more incredible. This is the perfect starchy side to go with so many home-cooked meals. Go check this video out next for another way to improve your home cooking.